First, what we have to do, we have to make our top holes for the fire pot. Now you're going to want to do that with your beer can opener with the bottom attached, because otherwise you don't have enough stability or strength in the integrity of the can to be able to do that. The can will collapse on you. What I have found is that if you take your finger and place it right just above, not right underneath where the point is, but just east where the point is, where your first point is, because you don't want it going in your finger, but you need to support it so as not to distort your can, okay? Now what I found is that you start your cut, you kind of do it slowly, you don't want to go too far, you only want to go approximately this far, so where it's running perpendicular with your can, because you don't want to go all the way to the bottom of the can. You see where that's at? Do you see how far that we've gone into that can? We've only gone about halfway to the edge of the can. What we want to do for our spacing now, we want to take one width of the can opener. In other words, there'd be one space between each notch. Okay, there I'm going horizontally. One space over, notch. One space over, notch. One space over, notch. Now you will get some distortion, but we'll take care of that on our anvil afterwards. And I'll show you what that is when we get to that point. One space over, notch. One space over, notch. Now we're done with this can to this point. We'll go over now to our 1 quart paint can. Now there again, this one, we're going to notch on the bottom. Now this can is different compared to the fire pot, our outside shell. On this can, we want to go all the way down. Because remember, this feeds air for our primary and our secondary air. This is our secondary air. So we need more air going in here than we need going up here. Here again, support your can with your fingertip, go all the way down. You can see here, there again you use your spacing. One width of the can opener, over, one space, 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 over. See, now here when I come to my end, I'll just go right into the center of the 2 holes. And there we are. See the difference of the way how deep we go on each one? Okay, now we'll go on to the next step. Take our can opener. If you hold it on the ground, it'll actually go better for you than if you hold it in the air. You may have a hard time getting past certain points because of the notching, but take your time, be patient. Sometimes when you're a learner, it's better to have more than one can to work on because you will make mistakes. The nice thing with this, there's nothing that's that super critical that if you notch a little bit too deep, you don't have your spacing quite perfectly, that it will not work for you. Okay, there again now. Remember I was saying to you, gloves are important for the learner because of the sharp edges. Now as you see here, we've got the little can sticking up here. What I like to do now, that's where our needle nose come into play. Take our needle nose, bring it around about, so it's just sticking a little bit up side the lip. That way we can get in there with cutters to trim it. Go all the way around. Take your time. This isn't a horse race. Now, this is when we're going to use our tin snips. We take our tin snips and we trim, we go around and we trim at an angle because then we'll go back around the other direction and we'll trim it once more. Make sure your tin snips are sharp. You'll have much better luck. And as you can see, you don't need to do this in a shop. This can be done in a field expedient method. Now I'm going the opposite direction. And you can see now how I can get so much closer with my trimming. Use my needle nose pliers once again. Flatten them down. I may want to trim some of these a little bit more. Just kind of go right around the edge of the can. Okay, now we'll wait till we go over to our anvil until we get the next can done. Here again, using our can opener. Now, here again, this is where my needle nose come into play. Some of these aren't quite far enough, so I'll kind of tweak them a little bit more because that metal will just kind of come around for me. Now again, I kind of bring them up so I can trim them, make them balanced out so they're even. I'll take and trim once again with my needle nose, with my tin snips. There's different ways you can do this. This is, there's different technique an individual can use, but if you follow these basic guidelines, this will give you a good starting point to get going with it. Take your time. Now I'll go back the opposite direction. Okay. Now I'll bring these around with my needle nose so they're more flat. Now the thing here we want to look at is the difference. As you see here, see how this is down a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch, where on here we're all the way to the reinforcement rim of the can. Okay, this is our primary air, this is our secondary air. And now we're ready to go over to our anvil surface. Now you're going to need some sort of anvil surface. It doesn't have to be this elaborate. It could be a small jeweler's anvil. It could be a small piece of heavy pipe. We've used this. I have a heavy steel sawhorse with a large pipe clamped to the surface here. So this is going to be for my bottom grate. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around and even out these edges. Now I take my can, place it over the anvil. Now I know some people talk about using a step drill. I find there's nothing gained by that. They're expensive. It's hard to use a step drill on this thin of metal. It tends to tear. And so I feel it's just as easy, quicker, simpler, works fantastically well, just using the old beer can opener or church key as some people call it. If I have to, I might trim a little bit of the edges if there's any sticking up. If you put the flat edge next to the can, you can get very flush. Okay, that looks good. And if you don't have an anvil or a piece of pipe to use in an anvil, that's not a problem. If you can find yourself a small piece of hardwood, kind of round it because your can is round. So you want to be able to follow the contours of your can. You can see here, oh, that'll work. Otherwise, if you don't round it, it'll cause creases on your can. So we'll take this one off. Now if you're out in the field and had to be more expedient, you could cut yourself, and you had a saw handy, you could cut yourself a piece of fuel wood about the diameter of the can. Take the bark off, and you could use it the same way. Well, it'd really be nice if you had a deadfall sitting up in the air. You could cut that piece of deadfall off, and you could do it right there. As you can see here now, because the can is soft, but it's hard enough. It's not going to cause bad damage or distortion to your can. We're getting the same effect. As you can see, I'm taking out all the crinkles and giving us a nice flat, smooth edge inside our can, taking out the distortion that was created when we notched it. Nice thing with the hardwood, it does just about as good a job as if we had a metal anvil, as we can see right there. You don't need a lot of fancy gear or kit to be able to make these.